Hi, everyone, and welcome back to From Print to Pod. We have with us today Robin Finn, who wrote the article, Why So Many Women Struggle to Write and What's Really Behind It. I'm going to have Robin introduce herself in just a second, but just quickly, in that article, she shares why so many women struggle to write and what's really behind it. It's difficult to write, she claims, when we do not believe our words have value. Robin, welcome.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
Sure. Please tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm a writer, a teacher, a workshop facilitator. I'm the author of the novel Restless in LA and the new book Heart, Soul, Pen, Find Your Voice on the Page and in Your Life. And I'm the creator and founder of Heart, Soul, Pen Women's Writing Workshops.
Okay, fantastic. And I'll also add here, although I could add it anytime during our podcast, that you've also facilitated 2 workshops during our SoMeDocs conferences. So, guys, check out Leadership for Women in Healthcare. That's now a course, our first annual, and also the second annual Writers Conference for Healthcare Professionals. Okay, question 1. You mentioned that the struggle to write is often not about writing itself, but about our relationship with worthiness. Can you elaborate on how this internal conflict manifests for women writers?
Yes. So, one thing I want to say is that my background is in public health, spiritual psychology, education and training, and writing. So, I brought these things together in my work with women. I've been working with women writers for over 10 years. And I can tell you from the perspective of both a writer and a teacher that what happens is the biggest block to writing, and I'd say to any kind of creative self expression, is judgment. And so I talk about in my new book that you can write while believing that what you have to write isn't really important, or that you yourself aren't particularly a good writer, or that what you have to say isn't important. You can write against those beliefs, but it's like writing through mud. It's literally like pushing yourself through when you don't actually believe in the worthiness of what you have to share. And so the opposite of that would be to really work on and look at the beliefs that you hold about yourself as a writer, about your writing voice, about what you want to say in this world, and work on changing and revising those beliefs before you ever write. And you will find writing so much more joyful, easier, and more flow. Because when we write, when we don't believe in what we're writing, or we don't believe in ourselves as a writer, we have to write through such intense barriers of shame and doubt.
In your article, you discussed the concept of Misslexia. And this term was new for me too, although I figured it out just by looking at it, right? It's sort of a play on words on dyslexia, but adding the miss in there. How do you see this phenomenon affecting women in different stages of their writing careers?
Well, what I talk about limiting beliefs in the article, and I'd say that, particularly for people who are very accomplished, they can get into this idea of perfection, and that if it's not perfect, it's not worth doing. And so, what happens for women is that they have an idea and they might start to write, but because they don't believe it's perfect, it never actually gets completed. And so, we can end up with lots of incomplete cycles of action, lots of writing we started but never finished, lots of ideas, but it never actually comes to fruition. And a lot of time that's because we have this belief about perfection, and it has to be perfect instead of it being done. And I talk a lot with my students and clients about being done for now, DFN, and writing something, considering it done for now, and not allowing perfection to be the enemy of finished.
Okay, wonderful. Um, what role do societal expectations and gender norms play in the challenges women face when trying to express themselves through writing?
Well, it's interesting because I think all creative people have the gremlins of doubt and shame. I think all creative people have these artistic doubts that appear for all of us. But the thing about women is that we have, on top of the regular limiting beliefs about art that plague all artists. We have a whole nother set of beliefs that are specific to women. And a lot of these occur in childhood. They are also what I call art school trauma, where someone told you somewhere along the way that in order to be liked, in order to be good, in order to be worthy as a woman or a girl, a young girl, you have to be quiet, you have to be polite, you can't make other people feel uncomfortable. You shouldn't talk about topics that are in some way dirty or inappropriate. You have to really keep yourself small and in a very particular box as a woman to have value. So on top of all the regular artistic beliefs that we have to fight against, we also have this whole set of cultural beliefs about what it means to be a worthy woman. And for a lot of women, that means to be quiet, be pretty, be small, and don't make other people feel uncomfortable. So if you have a powerful voice that wants to be heard, and you believe that being loud and being powerful means that you are in some way inappropriate or taking up too much space, then you can see how this creates a lot of barriers to your writing.
I think that's probably really true in healthcare, especially. So, definitely agree with that. Can you share any personal experiences or anecdotes that illustrate the internal barriers that women encounter in their writing journeys?
Well, I mean, I'd say the beginning of my journey, I have a master's degree in public health, and I worked in women's health. I did not work in the field of ADHD, but I ended up being a mother of a child with severe ADHD. And so I started, my original writing was personal essay about parenting a child with severe hyperactivity. And I had so much judgment. First of all, it seemed like a shame and a secret, like don't tell anyone that your kid is hyperactive. I also felt like, who's going to care about this? Why is anyone going to care about the fact that my parenting life is so difficult because I'm not ever invited into any village. No one will tell me where it is. Nobody, I get lots of judgment about it's my fault. My kid's hyperactive. I clearly am a bad mom, all this kind of thing. So I can tell you from my own experience, when I began writing personal essays about parenting, I had a lot of shame. I had a lot of judgment, and it was really scary for me to be willing to write about what was true for me and what I really felt very passionate about, which was kind of destigmatizing this. But I did finally write something. And when I wrote a piece and pitched it and saw it was published, I was terrified. So I really know that experience of wanting to come forward with a story that's really important to you, even if it's a story that you feel like is in service to others, but working against this feeling of it's shameful to share. And it wasn't until after I actually jumped in and did it and I was really flooded with emails from other parents saying, "Oh my God, I'm having this experience," that I really embraced the power of sharing your voice, sharing your story, and how it is in such service to other people. That really changed my experience of writing for me.
Now, how can women writers begin to dismantle the limiting beliefs that hinder their own creative expressions?
Well, the most important, number one, I talk about to revise and release your limiting beliefs. The very first thing you have to do is be willing to sit down and actually write down, what do I believe about my voice? To pose these questions to yourself. What do I believe about my voice? What do I believe about myself as a writer? What do I believe about myself in terms of my own personal worthiness? What do I believe about people who share their writing out loud or in the world, and really look at the beliefs that you hold. So often when we look at the beliefs, we laugh and go, I don't even believe what I believe. But we won't know what is actually operating inside of us unless we take the time to sit down and literally pose these questions and write down the answers. And once you write them down, be willing to look at them. And if they don't support your goal, which is to write and to share, start literally crossing them out. I mean, this seems really simple, but it's a very transformative process to literally write a line through the beliefs. This is too small for me. I don't believe this anymore. This is old. And then create new beliefs that support you. Beliefs that say, I believe I'm worthy. to share my voice. I think my writing is good enough. I feel really called to write about this subject, and that's a good enough reason. And really create new beliefs, write them down that support you, and reread them every day. And it's a practice, but as you read your new beliefs, they start to be your new operating system, and it will create so much more momentum, inspiration, and flow for you as a writer.
Fantastic. Now, we have an interactive group that we created for our writers conference, and we continue to network there and share our writing, etc., even as we go into the third annual. Do you believe that mentorship and community support are vital in helping women overcome their writing struggles? And if so, how?
Well, that two things. Yes, I believe that community is so important. I offer a lot of opportunities for women to write in community because I think writing is generally a solitary gig, and writing in community is next level in terms of getting inspired. I think mentorship is also fabulous. I've had so many wonderful writing mentors in my own journey who've supported me. But the one thing I want to say, I work only with strength-based feedback. I work only with strength-based feedback. And I really encourage writers who are getting in community or be having mentors to be critical about the types of communities and mentorship they're working with. I believe very strongly that critical feedback is offered way too early in the writing process. And I would encourage writers who come together, especially new writers, to work with strength-based feedback, to look at what is working already in your writing, where you can go deeper, what's the message that wants to come out, and work with being inspired and building on your writing practice. And do not work with your early material on critical feedback, because I find that critical feedback shuts people down and disconnects writers from their own creative genius. And that really the best time to get critical feedback is at the end of your project, not at the beginning. So I just want to underscore, I love community and I love mentorship, and I encourage writers to consider working with a strength-based framework.
Thank you for that. In your view, how does the publishing industry's landscape impact women's confidence and willingness to share their work?
Well, I talk about this in my book. Being published and being considered, a literary genius is really fun, but it is not a value judgment. Okay, the wind blows to the west and you get an agent and you sell your book, and it blows to the northeast and you don't. And honest to God, it's as simple as that in so many cases. I encourage people, if you want to have your work traditionally published, to write your book proposal or write your novel, have it professionally edited, pitch it, write a fabulous query letter and go for it. But just know that if it doesn't happen for you in the traditional way, it is not a judgment of the value of what you have to share. It's a judgment of what is happening now in the publishing industry. And what is happening now is that it's extremely hard to get a book deal, and that publishers typically do not want to take chances on new voices. Unfortunately, that is the case. So really disconnecting what is valuable from what is happening in the publishing industry, really understanding they're not the same, and being really clear about what you want to do. And if you want to get your work out into the world, there are many, many opportunities. So, to just keep that in mind.
How can writing be used as a tool for healing and empowerment for women who have been silenced or marginalized?
I mean, that's like my favorite thing. Thank you so much for asking me that. But like, if you're listening to this podcast and you're a woman, start writing, because my mission is to have women writing everywhere. But writing is healing. Writing is truly a way to uncover your own voice and connect to your own voice. And there's nothing more healing and more powerful than connecting to your own voice. So writing, short burst writing in short bursts, being willing to go into places that may feel painful, but being willing to allow yourself to have that space to write. No one has to see your writing if that is what you choose. It's just for you. But being willing to go into these places to write your experiences and to share it with yourself is so powerful. Having a regular writing practice really will change your writing and change your life. I just can't say enough. I recommend journaling. I'd say you can write twice a week for 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be a massive endeavor. You could write short burst writing, start small. But I really believe that if you start writing, you really come to know and understand yourself better. And that's where the healing begins.
Again, I really can identify with that, especially in the healthcare industry where we're dealing with an increasing rate of burnout throughout the specialties in our field. And part of that is why I work on our magazine and allow people to publish their voices even anonymously, where they get to sort of vent what exactly they're struggling with without having to always expose who they are. So looking ahead, what changes would you like? You answered some of this, but what changes would you like to see in the literary world to better support and uplift women writers?
Okay, two things. One thing I just want to say is that, to your point, especially for women in the healthcare profession, writing is self-care. And the thing is, people talk about self-care, self-care. People don't even know what self-care means. And also, self-care is also often comes with a huge price tag. Self-care weekend. So I just want to underscore that a regular writing practice is self-care, and it's free or cheap. All you need is a piece of paper and a pen and a little guidance. You're welcome to pick up Heart Soul Pen, my new book, but there are lots of books out there that give you some prompts and give you some basic guidance. But the thing that I love about healthcare is about writing is it really is accessible as a form of self-care on a regular basis to everyone. So I just wanted to say, particularly for healthcare providers who don't have a lot of time, this is a low commitment for a huge impact. Um, and then in terms of changes I'd like to see in the publishing industry, I'm always about just lifting women's voices. You know, Unfortunately, women are often told, and this happened to me, we've already heard your story. It's as if like we can hear men's stories over and over and over again, just over and over and over again. But women, we heard that midlife transition story once. We don't need to, we read Eat, Pray, Love. That's we're good forever. So, that is absolutely not true. So I guess I would just say that in the publishing industry, I would like to see more emphasis given on the stories that women have. And it doesn't have to be stories of climbing Mount Everest, but of regular women and the struggles that they have, because women actually love to read and relate to other women. And so this idea that we only need your story one time ever, but we need to hear the men's stories over and over again, that's just not true. And so I would like to see the publishing industry pay more attention to women's lives and women's stories and elevate their stories, because I think that they are very important.
Robin Finn, we would love to read more from you and we would love to hear more from you. So check out Robin Finn and thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.